Chapter 8. Islands in the Sky. Sim sat with his feet up on the windowsill in the living room, gazing out at the front garden. His chair leaned back on two legs. The sunshine glimmered through the window, illuminating his white shirt. His boots sat on the floor next to him, laces untied, ready to be put on at a moment's notice. He turned to look at the clock on the shelf and watched it stop ticking for a moment. The second hand ticked backward once, then forward again, rapidly catching up to the lost moment. He stared back out the window, closing his eyes as he felt the sunshine radiate around him. He desperately longed for the warmth and relaxation, and was now left to enjoy the moment in peace.
I love you. I'm sorry I haven't said it enough these past few days.
Allie delicately walked down the stairs wrapped in the red blanket he had given her, careful not to make any noise to disturb him. She strolled across the entryway, the blanket sliding across the dusty marble floor.
Yes?
Asked Sim. He could feel her presence pull him away from his thoughts.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you,
said Allie as she stepped into the room.
You already have, so what is it?
She glanced down at the floor nervously.
I just wanted to talk to someone.
Well, I'm here. Talk away,
he said without looking away from the window. Allie sat down on the red velvet couch behind him.
Where's Otto?
She asked, looking around.
He went to his meeting. Should be back later.
Sim continued to relax in the silence. The clock ticked with each passing moment, growing louder and louder in the quiet room. The stillness soon became too much for Allie.
How do you live with it?
She asked. Sim sighed and opened his eyes. He continued to stare out the window.
Live with what?
Your family, your friends, all gone.
Sim shifted in his chair and slouched down further to get more comfortable.
Easy. I never had any.
You never had any family or friends?
I disappeared from my world when I was 9. I hardly recall anything before that.
Well, even at 9, you had to have remembered some things.
No,
said Sim, closing his eyes again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For what? My past? It's made my job as a guardian easier. The fewer people I know, the better things are.
A guardian?
The title given to me by my mentor. When he first made the Ark, he gave himself the title of Guardian of Worlds, making sure no one had to die alone, no one had to suffer alone, and no world would ever be destroyed so as long as he could stop it.
That sounds like a big responsibility.
Sim turned around and looked at her for a moment. He swiveled back around and stared back out the window.
I keep my focus on each person in need, never the world I'm saving. Makes my life easier.
You never wanted to do anything else?
Nope.
Really?
She asked, eyes wide. Sim sighed and spun around again to confront her.
I said you could talk to me, not ask me questions about myself. So if you're going to keep at it, I suggest moving on to someone else.
Allie stared blankly into his eyes. She hadn't intended to anger him. She only felt a desperate need to get to know her savior better, and to distract her mind from her own looming sadness.
No, I just wanted someone to talk to. Wouldn't hurt to get to know you better since I can't.
You can't go home? Well, don't worry about getting to know me, because nobody ever gets the chance.
Why?
There's a boarding house close by for new travelers like you. You'll be moving down there later tomorrow.
What if I don't plan on staying?
Allie stood up. Sim laughed.
Where would you go?
I'm going home.
Allie replied, trying to maintain her certainty. Sim looked at her, a scowl of vexation on his face.
Yeah, that's what I thought you'd say. Let me ask you a quick question. How many people do you think I've saved in my time?
Allie stared at him, unsure how to respond.
I don't know. A few hundred?
Hundreds. Thousands, maybe. And my mentor saved several thousand. I've saved so many people like you, I've lost count. One after the other, they all said the same thing you're saying now. I want to go home. Thank you for saving my life. I am forever in your debt, and on and on. Yet the one thing they forget, the one little, minor, simple detail they fail to realize. My job's only half done.
Sim looked over his shoulder.
You want to go home? How do you plan to get there? Because if you know of a way out of this purgatory, please share it with the rest of the class, so they'll stop breathing down my neck.
Allie sat back down on the couch. Despite the fear growing in her stomach, she cleared her throat and tried to glare back at him. She imagined herself trying to stand up against her own boss.
Where there's a will, there's a way, as they say.
Well, the only will you'll be riding on in that case is mine. Without me or Otto, you're never going to get home, nor will anyone else. So, you best sit back and enjoy yourself here, because it doesn't look like you're going anywhere anytime soon.
Sim sat back and clasped his fingers together in front of his mouth. His frustration bellowed out in each breath. He took a deep breath and lowered his head. Allie stood up and trudged toward the stairs, feeling the dam of emotion she'd held back, beginning to break free once more. Sim glanced over at Allie as she walked away, feeling compelled to say something. The thought of disappointing the person he once cared for most in the world with his selfish actions haunted him. His once better half's loving and lecturing voice lingered in his mind.
Get up, Otter. If I can't sleep on the job, neither can you.
Sim stood up from his chair.
Look, I'm sorry.
Allie turned around and looked at him.
I've just heard the same story from so many other travelers like you. You all think this place is just in your imagination, and that if you wish hard enough, you'll end up back home. Almost like it's a wonderland you never expected to stumble into. I understand. You want to go home, Allie. I just fail to understand why. Here you get a chance at a fresh start. Something I knew I wouldn't hesitate to take if I had the chance. I just need you, along with a lot of other people out there, to know that we're working on it. And you all just have to hang in there for us. And be patient.
Allie nodded, glad to see her rescuer wasn't all cold steel on the inside.
Thanks, Sam.
She dashed toward him and leaned her head against his chest, still wrapped in her red blanket. Sim stood with his hands to his side, unsure whether to hug her or not. He raised his right hand up and patted her back while keeping his left hand at his side.
I suppose you haven't had the chance to step out back yet,
he asked as he stepped away from her. She looked at him curiously. Allie shook her head. He walked away from her and crossed the room to the back hallway. Sim waved her along. Allie followed him, shuffling her feet under the blanket. He unlocked the double doors to the balcony at the back of the house, with a small grin on his face.
Before I take you home, you at least have to see my home,
he said, opening the doors, allowing the light to shine in. Allie turned to the corner. The glare from the sun on the horizon blinded her for a moment as she stepped outside. As her eyes grew accustomed to the light, she stood in awe, her mouth gaping wide open with a growing joy. Painted before her, softly blended like oil on a canvas, was an elegant display of blue, orange, and pink spread across the evening clouded sky. A sunset like she had never before seen in her life, more vivid than any other. The sun, an ample blue shining in the sky, eternally bound to a smaller, more vibrant yellow star, shone over a billowing field of clouds. A scattered field of massive, fragmented islands connected by grand stone and steel cable bridges, inexplicably floated across the sky before her. Allie stepped out further onto the stone balcony and gazed down. Below them, down a hill, rested a large, dense forest with a river flowing through it, ending at a waterfall that poured off the floating island endlessly into the sky. Out across the field of clouds, on the closest island nearby, stood a small city of towering skyscrapers accompanied by the sound of a bustling metropolis in the distance. Nestled on another island, far off to their right, attached by another long, large bridge, was a city decorated with Venetian-style architecture, filled with sandy-colored stone buildings with red rooftops. Allie peered out over the horizon. She could see that each island was decorated with small cities, all built to resemble places across the world she remembered from back home. New York City, Rome, Paris, Tokyo, Rio, Jerusalem, London. All of them eerily familiar to home, like large chunks of time left adrift in the sky.
This is...
beautiful, amazing, astonishing, inspiring,
asked Sim as he walked out onto the porch and stood next to her with his hands in his pockets.
awesome,
replied Allie with a smile.
I haven't heard that one, actually.
How did all this get here?
These islands are all that's left of worlds that were destroyed, most long before the Ark was ever made. Each one floats on its own pocket of fragmented space. Or, at least that's what we think they float on.
How long have you all been here?
We can't say. People here never really had any real way of keeping track. Could be a few hundred years, could even be millions. Kind of hard to keep a calendar around here.
Allie stood marveling at the surreal landscape ahead of her, thinking of how much her father would have loved to see such a sight. The feeling of joy and wonder faded, leaving her longing to see her own home again.
Do you think we'll ever get to go home?
Asked Allie as she stared back at him, frowning with a discouraged look. Sim sighed and stared down at the railing.
Listen, as I said before, I know you want to get back in a hurry. But the burden of finding a way home isn't on you, Allie. It's on me and Otto.
He lifted his head up and looked over at her.
I don't honestly know how long it'll take, but I can promise that I'll do everything I can to get you home.
Allie nodded at him and smiled, comforted by his sincerity.
Thanks, Sam. That really means a lot.
Allie replied. Sim smiled back at her. At the sudden roar of an engine overhead, the two of them jumped back from the railing as the underbelly of a small green and white plane flew over them. The pilot banked away, waving back at the two of them. Sim raised his arm and waved back.
Show off.
Who was that?
Merrick. He's a friend of mine. Probably on his way over to help me.
He flies a plane.
What? You thought everyone living in the sky just rode bikes?
Allie glared at him with her head cocked to one side.
Do you fly?
She asked. Sim laughed.
I wouldn't be caught dead in an airplane, even if my life depended on it. Now, come on. I need to take you to buy some new clothes before he gets here.
Allie tilted her head, finding irony in the fact that someone living among a city in the clouds would have a fear of flying. Sim turned around and walked back into the house with Allie following.
A guy willing to take a woman clothes shopping? This definitely isn't my world. Hey everyone, this is Abigail, the voice of Allie from Sem Adventures Across Time. If you've enjoyed your adventure so far, be sure to check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/TS Wieland. With your support, you'll gain early access to the next chapter of the book and even a copy of the book itself. With your contribution, more thrilling and inspiring audiobooks can be made every day through the hard work, time, and dedication of voice actors and artists all across the world, including myself, all working together. From all of us here in the world between worlds, we'd like to thank you for joining us on our adventures.